Welcome to TFR Let's Talk. I'm your host, Swapnil Bhartia, and my next guest is Marti Bolivar, Senior Software Engineer at Nordic Semiconductor. Marti, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Can you quickly tell us about the company itself? What is Nordic Semiconductor all about?
So Nordic Semiconductor is a fabless semiconductor company based out of Norway. We are well known for our Bluetooth chips, and we've recently launched radio chips and have started to make moves in the Wi-Fi space. So exciting times for us, and I'm excited to be working here.
How is Nordic Semiconductor involved with Zephyr project?
Nordic Semiconductor is a prominent member of the Zephyr project. There are a variety of membership levels, and Nordic is at the highest level, the platinum level. Many Nordic developers kind of work almost full-time on Zephyr, helping users and submitting new features, fixing bugs, things like that.
And in what capacity are you using Zephyr? You mentioned Bluetooth. I'm pretty sure that you are using in all those cases, but I want to understand some of the products or IPs where you're using Zephyr.
Those of your audience who might be familiar with Nordic's chips may have been users of the NRF5 SDK, and that was kind of a proprietary in-house software development kit for the Nordic chips. I actually was brought onto Nordic because I was a Zephyr developer rather than being already at Nordic and moving to Zephyr. So I'm not actually very familiar with it, but the next generation NRF Connect SDK is kind of entirely based on Zephyr, and it's a common development platform for all of Nordic's chips going forward.
Let's talk about West, the command line tool that is being developed there. Talk about, first of all, why the tool was created. And number two is that what specific problem is trying to solve.
So West was really created to solve some common problems that firmware developers are going to face, and also kind of the developers of firmware platforms also face. So these two problems are organizing all the source code repositories and also managing the really common developer workflow tasks like flashing and debugging that are going to be using those source codes, right? So Zephyr is batteries included RTOS, right? You may know some other real-time operating systems that sort of just give you a kernel and then let you off and on your merry way, and you have to stitch all the pieces together. You want a file system, well, you got to go find a file system. You want a network stack, oh, well, there's a variety of choices, right? So Zephyr gives you everything. And that means tying together, dozens of source code repositories. Beyond a kernel, you've got device drivers, HALs from different hardware vendors, libraries like file systems and network stacks, and crypto stacks, et cetera. So Zephyr needs to track all that in a way that lets us make progress on in-development code while we can still manage and maintain our old releases. And users are going to take all that and integrate it. They're going to mix and match. They're going to add their own code. They're going to get rid of things that they don't want. And West lets you write all of this down, all this giant pile of code in a way that makes it easy to sort of get set up in terms of having a local workspace on your development machine, and keep it in sync as other developers make changes between releases and stuff like that. So the other thing I mentioned is part of being batteries included is that we make it easy to do all the sort of core developer workflow tasks, like you build, you flash, you debug, that kind of main cycle. Traditionally, when you're doing firmware, you're going to have to learn a new tool for every different hardware vendor. It might be a variety of different tools. And one of the things that West does for Zephyr is it provides this extension mechanism where you can write plugins. And Zephyr has West plugins that let you just say West debug, and then you get a debugger prompt. And all of the kind of sort of complicated vendor-dependent magic is hidden from you under this interface.
If I'm not wrong, there are already many tools who can do most of what you are trying to do with West. So why you did not use them? Why you created West? Was there something special that they are not able to do, or something you wanted to achieve?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I used to work a little bit with Greg Hartman, who's one of the Linux kernel maintainers, and we got into a joke about developing operating systems, and he's like, well, we're the sort of people that are crazy enough to try to develop our own operating system, so of course we're going to be nuts enough to like invent everything else on the side. And I know that there's a temptation to feel like that about West, but I've used a variety of the other tools. I was doing Android development for a while. Google has a tool called Repo, which does the same thing for managing your source code. Why didn't we use Git Submodules, et cetera, et cetera? And I just have never run into a cross-platform tool that lets you manage your Git repos in as flexible a way as West does. A lot of these tools tend to be very platform specific, so they won't run on Windows, and the vast majority of firmware developers do use Windows, and we have to make sure they have a good experience. There's just there's just a lot of features in terms of like being able to pull in just a subset of the repositories according to a configurable set of rules that we've built into West that I don't think are available in other tools. And then in terms of extension commands, the traditional way that firmware developers are going to do this is they're going to have a script subdirectory, and then every single person who gets started on the project is going to have to go through sort of a complicated setup where they add it to their path, and oh, it doesn't work on Windows, or you have to run this one on Windows and this one on Linux, and it's always different. And we really wanted to provide a sort of seamless experience across platforms with Zephyr. And since we were unable to kind of find a tool that gave us that, we decided to build one ourselves.
How well West is integrated with a Zephyr build system?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I will take it as an opportunity to sort of make it clear that it's optional. A lot of people hear about tools like this and they're like, oh, great, another giant blobby framework that is not going to get out of my way. And it will. You don't have to use it if you don't want to or if you can't, right? We have people that use Zephyr that are involved in medical devices, and they have to really carefully audit every new tool. And because of that, we want it to be possible to use Zephyr without West, and it is. So the way that it works is that the Zephyr build system is going to detect if it's running inside of a West workspace. And if so, it's going to look for all the Git repositories and all the tools that West provides, and it'll use them by default if they're there. So if there's a file system repository that's included in the list of places to get code that West provides, then Zephyr will just use it and it'll just work. But that's all done with some extra build system metadata in that source code repository itself that says, here I am, Zephyr, here's how you use me. And you can just tell the build system where all these modules are and skip West entirely. And that's how you'll do Zephyr development, for example, if you're not using Git. And similarly, if you've got your own flashing and debugging workflow, you can just use it. So I guess to sum up, West is kind of there for you. It tries to make your life easier. We're all firmware developers. We kind of have felt the same pain, and we're trying to make life better for everyone. But if it doesn't work for you, that's great, and it'll get out of your way if you don't want it.
Can you talk about who is using it? What kind of ecosystem? By ecosystem, I mean developer communities around you, or one of the maintainers of the project. So talk about that community side and usage of it.
Probably most people who use Zephyr are using West. It's kind of the de facto tool. We do get people who don't want to use it for like regulatory reasons, like the medical device manufacturer that I mentioned earlier. And then, there's also developers that, they don't like the extra wrapper, people that want full control. And, obviously firmware developers tend to be that sort of person. So you do get sort of the odd case. But I think in terms of what, I'm very active on Slack and the mailing list. And when I see questions roll in, it's pretty clear that West is used by most people who use Zephyr.
Awesome. Marti, thank you so much for taking time out and talk about West, Zephyr and Linux. I don't like versus Linux. Thanks for this conversation, and I look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Have a good one. Thanks for having me.